The arrest that shook Willow Creek. The sun dipped lazily through the thick summer air, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks of Willow Creek, a sleepy town tucked away in the vast Midwest, where time seemed to stretch a little longer and the same faces passed each other for generations. The town wasn't famous for anything in particular, except perhaps for how little it ever changed. Dr. Evelyn Reed hadn't meant to disrupt that quiet order. She was just passing through. Evelyn, a black woman of 51 with smooth espresso-toned skin and warm hazel eyes, had taken a few days off, a rare moment in her otherwise rigidly scheduled life. Her usual uniform was an olive drab military coat or a crisp Pentagon blazer. But today, in dark slacks and a linen blouse, she looked like any traveler, ordinary and forgettable. That was how she liked it. She drove through Willow Creek with a sense of nostalgia. Her Aunt Beatrice still lived in a little weathered house on Maple Street. As a child, Evelyn spent summers there, running barefoot, eating homemade cobbler, learning resilience from a woman who knew struggle well. Today, she was stopping in with a bouquet of hydrangeas and a bottle of local honey. The streets were mostly empty. It was nearly 4 in the afternoon. Evelyn spotted a small flower shop and eased into a parking space along the curb. The yellow markings on the asphalt had long since faded to ghostly lines, and a metal sign warning about parking restrictions between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock was nearly buried beneath an overgrown tree branch. Her dashboard clock blinked 3:55 p.m. She glanced around. The block was deserted. A short visit wouldn't hurt. But as she stepped out of her car, locking the door behind her, a siren chirped. A police cruiser had pulled up behind her. Its lights flashed, a blur of red and blue against the dull storefronts. Out stepped a man, stocky, middle-aged, with a flushed face and a scowl that deepened as he looked her up and down. His nameplate read, Officer Dale Brody. "Didn't you see the sign?" he barked, motioning toward the partially hidden post. "Or do we have trouble reading today?" Evelyn blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the rudeness. "Good afternoon, officer," she said evenly. "I noticed the sign, but it's obscured. And I believe it's still before 4. No grace, period," he snapped. "This is Willow Creek. We follow the law. I don't believe I violated anything, but if I did, I'm happy to resolve it." "Yeah," Brody spat. "Then it'll be $500 right now. Cash." Evelyn's brow creased. $500 for a parking mistake? That seems. He cut her off. "You want to argue with me?" She stepped carefully, her hands open and calm. "I just want to make sure this is handled properly. Isn't it standard to issue a written citation? I'd like to contest it if Brody's eyes darkened. People like you always think you can question authority." The phrase stung. It always did. She remained silent, forcing down the fire in her chest. She'd been through worse. In uniform, in Kandahar, this man's ego was just another battlefield. But Brody was winding tighter. He slammed his palm on the roof of her sedan. "Turn around and put your hands on your head," he growled. "Now, what are you doing?" Evelyn asked, eyes wide. "This isn't resisting now, huh?" Brody reached for his holster. A Glock appeared in his hand. He didn't point it directly at her, but the barrel hovered near her waist. Evelyn knew exactly what this was, a test, and not one she could afford to fail. Slowly, calmly, she complied. She turned, placed her hands behind her head, and whispered to herself, "Don't give him a reason." The handcuffs clamped shut with a cruel snap. "You're under arrest for obstruction and disorderly conduct," Brody muttered, shoving her toward the squad car. Pedestrians across the street had begun to gather, unsure, uneasy. No one moved to help. Evelyn was pushed into the back of the cruiser. The leather seat was cracked, the air stale. She kept her spine straight despite the ache in her shoulders. Brody said nothing as he drove. Occasionally, he glanced at her in the mirror, sneering. At the station, a crumbling brick building with a flickering neon sign, Brody hauled her out and marched her inside. A board desk, Sergeant barely looked up. Interview room 2, he barked. Another one who thinks she's above the rules. The room was cold. Concrete walls, chipped paint, a table that wobbled. Evelyn sat with her hands still cuffed behind her back. "I want to make a phone call," she said. Brody laughed. "To who?" "The governor." "The call is my right." The desk sergeant nodded. "Let her. We're not animals." Brody grumbled, retrieved an old landline, and dropped it on the table. 5 minutes. "Don't waste it." Evelyn leaned forward. Her fingers shook, not from fear, but from suppressed fury. She dialed a number that no one in that building could have imagined existed. There was no ring-tone, just a quiet voice. "Department Command, go ahead. This is Colonel Evelyn Reed, service number Bravo Echo 1287. I'm being detained unlawfully at the Willow Creek Police Department. Charges are fabricated. Request immediate protocol review and assistance." Silence. Then, affirmative. "Coordinates locked. Stand by for contact. You will not be alone." Evelyn hung up. Brody squinted. "Who'd you call?" "Your mommy." The sergeants had jerked up. "What did you say?" "I think you're both in serious trouble," Evelyn said, her voice like cold steel. 10 minutes later, the building shook. Black SUVs with tinted windows screeched to a halt outside. Men in uniform emerged. Not local, not state. These were federal military enforcement officers. Heavily armed. Precise. The commanding officer walked in without knocking. "Major J. Thompson. We're here for Colonel Reed." The sergeant pointed. "Room 2. They entered to find her still cuffed. "Unacceptable," Thompson barked. "Uncuff her immediately." Brody moved like a puppet whose strings had been cut. He fumbled with the key, his hands trembling. As the cuffs dropped, Evelyn stood slowly. She adjusted her collar and turned to Thompson. "Thank you, Major." "Your safety is our priority, ma'am." The chief of police arrived, breathless. "Colonel, this is a misunderstanding." "Yes, Chief Miller." "The Pentagon will be reviewing your department," Thompson said. "Expect full federal inquiry. Colonel Reed will be filing charges." Brody stepped back, pale as Evelyn passed. She gave him one glance, a quiet, devastating dismissal. The military convoy disappeared as quickly as it came, leaving Willow Creek stunned. The town buzzed for weeks. Officer Brody was fired. The police department came under national review. Procedures changed. Oversight expanded. But for Evelyn, the lesson went deeper. She knew she'd been protected by rank and uniform, by the weight of her name. But what if she were someone else? A teenager in a hoodie, a nurse after a night shift, a mother on the way to daycare? Would the outcome have been different? Yes, and that truth haunted her. As the SUVs rolled toward the horizon, Evelyn Reed closed her eyes. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. In the aftermath, the federal inquiry into the Willow Creek Police Department revealed a pattern of abuse of power and racial bias. Several other officers faced disciplinary action, and Chief Miller was eventually forced to resign. The town underwent mandatory sensitivity training, and community policing initiatives were implemented in an attempt to rebuild trust. Evelyn, though deeply troubled by her experience, used her platform to advocate for police reform and accountability at a national level. She spoke at conferences, met with lawmakers, and shared her story to highlight the systemic issues that allowed such injustices to occur. She established a foundation dedicated to protecting the civil rights of marginalized communities and providing legal aid to those who had been unfairly targeted by law enforcement. Years later, Willow Creek became a case study in how a small town could confront its own prejudices and work towards meaningful change. While the scars of the past remained, a new era of transparency and accountability began to take root. Evelyn often returned to visit her Aunt Beatrice, and though the memory of her arrest lingered, she also saw signs of progress: a more diverse police force, community dialogues on race relations, and a palpable shift in the town's atmosphere. The hydrangeas on her aunt's porch seemed to bloom a little brighter each year, a quiet testament to the hope that even in the sleepiest of towns, justice could eventually find its way.